Welcome to the Disability and podcast, bringing together thoughtful discussion and debate. This month, Disability Arts Online founding editor Colin Hambrook chats with writer, actor, poet and comedian Jasmin Thien. As a disabled migrant to the UK of Chinese heritage, Jasmin reflects on her intersectional experience of the performing arts. She also tells us about her recent debut as an actor with Extant Theatre's superpower Panto.
Welcome everyone to this month's Disability and podcast. We're very happy to have Jasmin Thien with us today. Jasmin is a freelance actor, writer, poet, and a stand-up comedian who is involved in a whirlwind of projects in theatre. And we're going to talk a bit about Jasmin's coming to England and about her trajectory as an artist. So welcome, Jasmin. By way of introducing yourself, can you tell us something about your experience as an intersectional artist coming to England?
Colin, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah, so by way of introducing myself, I am a disabled woman of colour. I am of Chinese heritage. I was born and raised in Brunei in Southeast Asia. It's a tiny country sharing borders with Malaysia and Indonesia. I'm completely blind, and I also have a myriad of other disabilities, as a lot of us do. I think disabilities often cluster together. What I find is that intersectionality just does not get addressed enough in the arts, which is what drew me to the arts in the first place, I think. So by way of an example, I'm currently working on a piece of spoken word poetry that looks at the lack of sexualization, weirdly, of disabled women. So disabled women occupy a really weird space where we are not seen as sexual beings. People find it difficult to conceive of the idea of a disabled woman having any kind of sex life or romantic life. But at the same time, we are very vulnerable to sexual assault. Statistics show that disabled people are 3 times more likely to be targets of sexual assault. And it's this weird dichotomy that we occupy that, obviously, women listening to me right now will go, well, as women, we are very vulnerable to sexual assault as well. And I absolutely agree. And that is awful. And we do need to move towards changing that. But I think especially in a post-Me Too movement, disabled women are often left out of the conversation about body autonomy and our right to consent. So it's just looking at areas like that. Those are the topics I'm particularly passionate about, looking at how we peel away at the layers of what it means to be living an intersectional experience. And that's just one of the examples.
And what is it that appeals to you about theatre as a medium for exploring those issues and for addressing social justice?
Yeah, weirdly enough, theatre was never a medium that actually appealed to me that much, because I never had access or opportunities to the theatre. So I grew up in Brunei. Theatre is absolutely non-existent. It's just not a thing. You don't go to the theatre at all. There just isn't any. So I discovered theatre at the age of 21. So I was fairly late to the game, really, when I came to the UK for my higher education. I went to Cambridge University, and that was where I discovered theatre the first time. And I just fell madly in love with it, because what I find with theatre is that it is such a powerful medium for influencing cultural, social, and political change, as well as being influenced by it. I find that as actors, as theatre makers, as creators, we have the power to make audience care about narratives that they usually might not care about if they see it on the news, if they read about it, if they've heard about it from their friends. They might not necessarily care about them, but when they see it portrayed on stage because they connect with the characters and the stories, that is how we can start planting the seed for people to think differently, to see differently, to go, oh, that person might live a life that's completely different from mine, but I sympathize with them. I relate to them. I empathize with them. I see the humanity in them. And that is where I think we can start shifting the social attitudes, especially around minorities. And for me, I tick almost every minority box. So it's something I'm very passionate about.
You moved on to be involved with the Performance Academy with the New Earth Theatre for Southeast Asian and East Asian artists. How was that, and how did that then lead on to getting involved with Extant Theatre?
Yeah, so with New Earth Theatre, it was an amazing experience, but at the same time, it was a bit of an accident. I got sent a WhatsApp message from a really good friend who is also a director, and a theatre maker, and she was just, you have to apply for this. And the Performance Academy is this program that New Earth Theatre runs every year, and it's for emerging artists like myself who are really keen to get into theatre but have no idea where to start. And that was what I did, really. I applied for it, I got in, went up to Manchester to do a week of training with an incredible director and theatre maker, Jude Christian. And from there, I met Kumiko, who runs New Earth Theatre. And it just sort of snowballed from there, really. Kumiko has a very close relationship with Maria, who runs Extant. And Kumiko just connected us. And that was how Maria and I met. Although we didn't formally met in person until I started with Superpower Panto.
Yeah, Superpower Panto. It was a great show, and I believe that was
Thank
your
you.
first sort of main touring part. It was a great to see Extant working in children's theatre. That was it was a new outlet for them as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I've been told, that they've never done children's theatre before. But Superpower Panto is actually a project that was 6 years in the making. They partnered with a children's panto company called Simply Smiley. And this was earlier this year in March that we toured all around the country. We did 9 cities, all the way from London to Birmingham to Newcastle to Hereford. I think it was 20 shows in 28 days that we did, across schools, community centres, theatre venues, and it was just an amazing experience. And yeah, that was actually my professional debut. It wasn't just my first job in touring, it was my first job as a professional actor being paid, period.
Wow. A very steep learning curve, I can imagine.
It was great fun.
How did you find it being on tour, and the stresses of kind of moving through different parts of the country?
I absolutely love traveling. So I found it incredible to just be able to visit all these amazing cities. Hereford was probably my favorite. I thought it was absolutely stunning. I wish that there was more time that we could have spent just exploring the cities, but obviously we were still working. It was just, in the odd hours that we could just go out and see the city. Um, I find it absolutely exhausting. I know that that's probably something that happens on tour every single time. And I think that I did not realize just how much it would take out of me. Because I thought going in, oh, we're doing about a show a day. Like, very rarely would we do more than one show a day. I can totally do this. It's going to be fine. And then I got to about day 23, I think it was day 23 of 28. And I just got so ill. I was just dead. And I mean, everyone got ill, but I think that I was just completely gone when we did our last couple shows in Brighton. I was, I was just, I was just dosing myself with lozenges backstage.
I have to say, because I was there and I saw the show at the Comedia, and I thought you did it incredibly well.
Thank you.
It really didn't show that you were that ill. Or I guess, being the support of the rest of the cast, because they were all amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what really helped as well is that all of them were very seasoned actors. They had worked in Panto, quite a few of them, for years and years and years, and they've toured before as well. And so I think just being told that, yeah, this happens all the time when you start, it's all right, you're not the only one. I think even just that helped quite a lot, because I became just so guilty.
And you've moved on with Extant to become one of their associate artists, and I'm really intrigued to hear about your one woman show, I Dream in Color. I believe that you're kind of that project has moved along quite a lot over the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I Dream in Color is, as you mentioned, a one-woman show. It's autobiographical, and it is about my family's journey with my blindness. I was born with a condition called retinoblastoma, which is a very rare form of childhood eye cancer. And growing up in a Chinese immigrant culture in Southeast Asia, where unfortunately disability is often seen as a fate worse than death. Really, it's seen as the worst possible thing that could happen to a family. Was very traumatic in many ways, and to this day I'm still, we spoke about this a little bit at the top of the show, that we both struggle with complex CPTSD, and growing up as I did, it still scars me to this day, and still something that I'm working through, and I think it's going to be a lifetime of working through it, really. But the show basically follows my family's story fighting cancer, and frankly being in denial of it for many years, until I finally lost all of my sight at about age 8. And then everything just came crashing down, and the family just had to accept that this was happening. But at the same time, it was very hard for them. So it's very personal to me. But I also, in the show, look into my family's, at the moment, still unknown history. I mean, my great grandparents fled China in the early 1900s, and none of us has any idea why. They wouldn't talk about it. And as part of the show, I examine sort of psychologically and philosophically this idea of the immigrant who is building a life for themselves in a new country, and survival is the word of the day every day, basically. And if you're an immigrant, you want your children to have the best possible chance at surviving wherever they are, because you don't know when, if at any point you might have to get up and flee again. That's always at the back of your mind, and it's so baked into our psyche. And when I first developed the show, I looked into as an immigrant, why you would not want your child to be disabled, why that would be your worst nightmare, because that child is frankly probably not going to have the best chance of surviving if you do need to flee. So yeah, it's a very emotional show, but I tried to make it funny. I tried to make it lighthearted. I tried to make it relatable. This idea that sometimes the people who can hurt you the most are also the people who love you the most. It's been wonderful creating this show with Extant. We did a work in progress performance of it at Camden People's Theatre in March as part of the Sprint Festival, and we are bringing it to the Bloomsbury Festival this October at the John Lyons Theatre, I believe, on Sunday, the 15th of October. So mark your calendars, people. And that is going to be a full-length 1-hour show, and I'm just so excited for it to hit the stage.
Wow, that's quite a story, Jasmin. It makes me wonder what survival means to you now in the context that you've found for your life and career in England.
Yeah, it's interesting, really, because I am actually the only member of my family who chose to migrate to the UK. So my siblings came to the UK for their higher education, but they chose to go back, and I was the only one who chose to come here and stay. So I think for me, what I learned reflecting on my family's history is that what is so fundamental about being Chinese and of our specific diaspora is that we're never afraid to start again. We're never afraid for everything to come crashing down and for us to need to build a life for ourselves again, to define ourselves completely anew. And that's what I think survival is for me, really, is that coming here was a chance to create the version of me that I would like. And this is not saying that I don't carry a lot of emotional baggage. I absolutely do. We all do. And, you know, as I mentioned, I suffer from complex PTSD, and it is quite severe. And I do carry a lot of trauma. And that is one of the things that it came as a big shock to me when I first came to the UK, really, because when I first arrived, I thought, hooray, 180 flip, we can just start anew, and then it'll come crashing down eventually. And I thought, oh man, I still have to deal with this baggage. It doesn't leave me. But I think what is so powerful about being of my heritage is that starting again is never something that we're afraid of doing.
Yeah. I can relate to that from my own issues with complex PTSD. That it's something that never completely goes away. You sort of continually find yourself kind of struggling to find new ways to cope and to deal with the issues that it's
absolutely lots and lots of therapy.
Yes.
I found that a therapy approach called internal family systems for me has been instrumental in helping me improve as well. So it's finding the right therapy approach for you, because everyone is very different.
And I'm intrigued that you found your way into stand-up comedy, and I'm wondering if because I think the things that happen to us to that kind of engender complex PTSD. I mean, they're so ridiculously powerfully traumatic that I can imagine that I know I for myself I use humor a lot as a way.
Yes.
As a coping mechanism. So I'm wondering if that's the same for you, and if those issues have found their way into your stand-up comedy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have always loved making people laugh. I think, as you say, it is a coping mechanism, and in a weird way, it's become a way to shield ourselves from the world. If we can make people laugh, then people might not probe too deeply into the pain and into the hurt that we carry. So I love doing stand-up comedy. I've done actually really well at it. So earlier this year, I entered this competition called the Max Turner Prize, and I think it was about 250 comedians in their early career stages, and I got to the final 15, which I was super chuffed about, because I literally just started stand-up comedy last November, so I'm very, very new. Yeah. And in my stand-up comedy, I absolutely address a lot of the issues that we've been talking about today. I talk about what it's like to be blind, to be a woman, to be a person of color, to be all three. You know, one of my big things about stand-up is that you have to laugh through the pain, otherwise you would cry. And I try my best in my stand-up to make things as nuanced as possible. And I do like a bit of lowbrow light comedy from time to time, but I think my big thing is making sure that I make people think as well as laugh. So one of my favorite things that I use in my stand-up is talking about, and I'm sure that a lot of disabled people can identify with this, is religious people insisting on praying for us.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the most exasperating things that happen to disabled people on a daily basis. Because you know that it's coming from a good place. But the thing that I address in my stand-up all the time is just, I mean, how little faith do these people have in their God? I mean, I don't care, you know, what religious denomination you're in. You know, as part of religion is generally believe that God made everybody. And so by that logic, surely you believe that God made me blind. So why are you asking God to reverse his choices?
Yes.
Why are you asking God to fix his, I guess in your mind, mistakes? I mean, that is terribly insulting to God. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite things that I go back to time and time again in my stand-up. And I get people coming to me afterwards all the time going, you know what, I've never thought of that. And that's what I want. That's the response I want from my stand-up, is that I make people laugh, but I also want to make people think. I want to make people go, oh yeah, why is that absurdity something we accept in life?
Yeah. I and when these when you get these experiences on the street, do you get into conversation with these people that are trying to
No, mate, I have CPTSD. I'm way too scared of conflict for that. I'm happy to do it behind a microphone on stage, and I'm not going to be ambushed. I'm not right. I don't do that when I'm on the street. No, I just tend to be very polite and go, no, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. I've been blind for 20 years. I'm pretty happy with it at this point. But it's so bizarre when it happens, because I had this one experience. I was in New Orleans in America years ago, and I got ambushed by this group of, I think it was at least 10 evangelical Christians. And they were trying to pray my blindness away, and they kept telling me to open my eyes and asking me whether I could see them. And I just like, no, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm sorry. I can't see you. And they kept asking me to close my eyes again so that they could pray again. I was just there thinking, how long are we gonna be here? I mean, I've got places to go, things to do. I still need to get my dinner.
Oh God.
I think it lasted for like a good 15-20 minutes before I just went, sod it, I need to leave. I can't be polite to these people anymore.
No. There comes a point where politeness runs out.
It's very British though, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is.
Speaking as someone who's not British but is so steeped in British culture now, I'm just like, yeah, I get it. We're just way too polite.
Yeah, I asked myself almost every day, why can't we be more French?
I love that. I love that. No offense to the French, obviously.
No, no, no. I mean that as a compliment.
Mm.
You know, the French don't stand for all the things that we put up with because of our politeness.
But we're also very snide about it, I think.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. There is that as well. There's a certain kind of arrogance that
Mm.
is within the culture.
Yeah.
But we digress. I was also wanting to kind of go into your career as a poet, and
Mm.
and I can imagine that a lot of these issues and uh, kind of finds its way into your performance poetry as well. And you also, I understand, um, uh, are have a residency with Apples and Snakes
Yes, I do.
poetry organization. How is that? How's that going along?
Oh, it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was such a surprise when I applied for it and I got accepted. So I worked with Apples and Snakes on two major projects. One was their Spine Festival, which is this month-long festival that they run in London, and they bring in artists of various mediums to go into libraries and run workshops with school-age children. So I was in as a spoken word poet and I worked with this absolutely fantastic movement director who is now a very good friend of mine. And we just delivered workshops to school children on the theme of kindness, which was super sweet, and so pertinent right now, I think. Um, and the other project that I've been working on with Apples and Snakes is their Diversifying Children's Literature program, which they brought in 10 artists from minority backgrounds. So everything from disabled artists to artists of color to queer artists. And together we created an anthology of children's poetry. It was led by the current children's laureate, Joseph Coelho, who is just, oh, what a man, what an absolute inspiration. I love his work so much, and he's just an absolutely amazing person to be around as well. And that is being published by Otterbury Books next spring. So I'm going to be a published author. Hooray! I can't wait for that to happen. It's just been such an honor and a privilege for that. And as you say, you know, these issues that we talked about absolutely go into my poetry as well. And it's been very fascinating writing for children, because we often think about children as being, you know, innocent and we need to protect them from all the terrible things in the world. But I do think that children actually deserve more credit than we give them. They actually understand way more than we think. And it is important to expose children, obviously in a controlled manner, about the injustices of the world. My background is in education. Actually, that was what I did as my degree at Cambridge. And I one of the poems that I write in the anthology is actually about how, as a small child, I was brought up on stage by my school principal in front of the entire school during an assembly, and I was presented as an example of a handicapped kid, which is terrible. But as a child, I didn't know what handicapped was, so you know that my poem that will appear in the anthology sort of addresses the child just being confused about what handicapped means. And I think I'm hoping that, you know, a parent reading that to their child will open up conversations about, you know, how language has evolved and how we don't use certain words now that we might have used 20 years ago, and why that is, and how we can work on improving, because there's always room for improvement in making sure that minorities feel included and respected. And yeah, I'm hoping that this poems like this and all the other fantastic poems in the anthology that address everything from race to religion, and everything in between, is going to open up those conversations with young children, because we so need it right now. And I have a lot of hope for the next generation. I mean, working with young children recently in workshops, and with Superpower Panto, I mean, kids under 10 are just so much more aware of injustices than I think we ever were as children. I mean, I just have to tell this story because it's just so good. When we did Superpower Panto, we were at this primary school in Telford in Shropshire, and there's this one scene, you'll remember it, Colin, where I, as the main character, get bullied for being blind. And we were so hilarious because the bully character was saying something along the lines of like, oh, there's nothing special about her, she can't even see. And there was this sudden eruption of children screaming, racism, you're racist, that's racist, you can't say that. And it was just absolute chaos. And we were just there thinking, you know what, it is an ism. They don't have the vocabulary for it yet, bless them, because they are like 4. But they recognize discrimination when they see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so powerful, and so it just fills me with so much hope for the future, that these kids as young as 4 were able to see, yeah, that is an injustice and I'm not going to stand for it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. That's a great story.
I will never forget that. I mean, it was just deer in the headlights moment for the 3 actors on stage. We were just absolutely frozen. We were thinking, well, there's no going back from this.
Wow. Congratulations on the book as well, Jasmin.
Thank you.
There are so many strings to your bow that you've been kind of developing and gaining success with. I wonder, do you have an idea of where you might be in 5 years' time? It feels like there's so many different directions that you could go in at this time, as a performing artist, as a writer, as a comedian. What kind of what aspirations do you have from here?
Yeah, I think that I just want to be a bit of a jack of all trades, and I know jack of all trades, master of none, but I think especially in the current industry, we do need to be quite eclectic as creators. We do need to create our own work as well as make other people's work. And I think for me, I mean, I have ADHD, so I think if I just stuck to one thing, I would just get very bored at some point. So I think for me, where I see myself in 5 years is just continuing to develop my craft, continuing to put work out there that makes people think, that challenges assumptions about who we are as minority groups, and exploring those key questions of why as humans do we do what we do and think the way we think. I'm very, very interested in the human condition and in human psychology, and I just want to be able to move people to question, to think, to reflect, and to become better versions of themselves. I think I'm very much an idealist. I think in that I have this need to be part of social, cultural, and political shifts and changes. Yeah, so hopefully that will happen in 5 years, and I'll be a lot further on in my career than I am now. Because it's been a wild ride so far. I've just started, like I mentioned. I just got my first professional paid gig this year, and I'm just absolutely astounded at how much I've been doing in this year. So I'm absolutely prepared for a dip at some point, because I've been told that it is going to come at some point, and I hope that I'll be able to deal with it when it comes. But I hope that when it does come, I'm going to be able to climb up again, because that's just a part of the industry. You dip and you climb up, and you dip and you climb up.
Yeah. And but you have got other pieces on the horizon as well. Yeah, I know that you've got some work with cryptic arts.
Yes, yeah. So I'm currently working with Cryptic Arts on developing a show called We Close Our Eyes, and it's looking at intergenerational trauma. And as a Chinese woman, I know for a fact that there has been a kind of almost self-enforced silence among generations of Chinese women about what we have experienced in our lives and the traumas that we have experienced. I mean, China has a very tumultuous culture, tumultuous history, I should say. And, my family fleeing China and moving to Brunei and starting a life there, like I say, I have absolutely no idea what they went through, because they just wouldn't talk about it. And so I developed this show, which is exploring the idea of why is it that we don't want our next generation to know about what we went through? Is it out of love? Is it this hope that as long as they don't know about the pain of the past, we can leave the pain in the past and they can move towards a future? Is it a fear of what we might lose if we do have the next generation know? Is it the ultimate sacrifice? Because as humans, we are completely obsessed with our legacy. I mean, we care so much about what we will leave behind when we're not here anymore. And by taking the stories with us to the grave, is that the ultimate sacrifice? Is it, people forgetting about my history allows them to create a better future for themselves? I don't know. It's questions that I explore as part of my piece.
It's really, really interesting. I know from my own lived experience, and I'm in my 60s now, that the thing that I've constantly been told through my life is that I should let it go. I should leave the trauma of the past behind and forget about it and move on. And that those experiences live in my body. They're in my DNA.
Absolutely.
They're not things that you can just forget about and move on without burying them really deep, because they will always out.
Absolutely.
And they affect your mind and the way that you think. They affect your consciousness on a daily basis, and that's, and so often that's been told to me out of kindness, but actually it's very oppressive.
Yes, I mean, you and I both have CPTSD, and we know that it absolutely affects how we interact with the world as well. So we do pass along our traumas subtly to other people in the way that we interact with them, and in the way that we respond to the world around us. But what I'm very interested in is in trying to leave the past in the past. What do we stand to gain, and what do we stand to lose ultimately? And I think that's a question that I'll be grappling with for many, many years to come.
Oh, Jasmin Thien, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we really look forward to seeing our Dream in Colour. It's in the Bloomsbury Festival in October.
Yes, October the 15th, which is a Sunday. So absolutely, please come as part of a Sunday family outing. Bring your family.
Can you remind us which theatre it's going to be in London?
It's at the John Lyons Theatre in London.
Fantastic. And where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at jasmin.thien. That is JASMIN, no E, dot T for Tango, Hien for November. So that's jasmin.thien on Instagram. And on Twitter, I am jasmin_Thien. So nice and simple, as long as you remember how to spell my name, which I appreciate is not easy.
It's been fantastic having you on the podcast, Jasmin, and
thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
I've look forward to catching up with your work, and a big thank you also to everyone for listening in to the podcast, and we look forward to our next outing with Mind the Gap Theatre. A big thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We do hope you've enjoyed this episode of Disability And. Please join us next month when Mind the Gap's assistant producer Paul Wilshaw chats with writer and researcher Daniel Folds when they discuss what disability pride means to them and how it can help further understanding of the disability community to the wider public.